Great Planet Earth by Hal Lindsey.
Me
And
too.
it was all about, you know, Israel coming back and the prophecies coming. I knew nothing about it. Nobody ever told me that before. And when I saw it, I could not argue it away. I was like, wow. So I started telling my friends about it, you know, and I wasn't saved yet, but I'm winning them to the Lord, you know, by telling them, you know, but that was what turned me as an atheist, because I couldn't argue it.
That's right. We can't argue, and that's why we got to look at prophecy. It's a prophetic time we're living in. We need to know what's going on. So the Josiah Manifesto, it is revealing what to us?
All sorts, I mean, where we have been, where we are going prophetically. And actually it begins, it's kind of like a, more than other books. I mean, I'm always, you know, the Lord has always led me to open mysteries, but this is kind of like opening up, I don't know, almost like this puzzle piece, it's like a treasure hunt and this puzzle piece and this mystery and this prophetic, and then they all come together, you know, to give the key to open up, okay, you know, what's the answer for what we do? Well, it begins, it's like a journey, it begins on the island of Cuba. And it was Fidel Castro, who was the dictator and communist dictator who ruled with an iron hand.
Yes.
At one point, he opened up the island for 1 month to give Christians will have religious freedom for 1 month. We don't know why, but the believers of Cuba asked me come and open it up, you know, and sound the shofar. And so I did. So I came there and I ministered throughout the island, and I won't go into this, but I've never seen so many signs like and wonders through this. There was, I mean, it's amazing. I mean, but and the thing is that there was revival. I mean, starting actually that event empowered this revival. And the thing is that at the end it ended up in Revolution Square in Havana, and that's where, you know, Fidel Castro used to make all those speeches, and he showed up for the event. You know, he didn't do anything. He just showed up and sat. And then I got invited to go to his presidential palace. And before I had left for Cuba, there was a Cuban pastor who came the week before to our congregation, Beth Israel, and he gives me a word, and he says, you're going to go where people haven't gone. You're going to enter the palace of the king. And so I'm invited. So now I'm going to the palace of the king, and because I kind of knew it beforehand, I prepared.
You took a gift, right?
I had three gifts for him. One was a Bible, which were banned, you know, and in Spanish, and a little inscription for Fidel Castro. And then the other one was a shofar with an inscription of a scripture, and that's about the Jubilee, because the message I was led to give throughout Cuba was Jubilee, everyone, of course, you know. And actually all over Cuba, they had posters of me, you know, I'm blowing the shofar saying, the Jubilee is coming, the Jubilee is coming, you know. And so I shared with him about the Jubilee. I mean, I gave that, and then I wrote like a prophetic word for him on a piece of paper, and I gave it to him about the Jubilee. Now the thing is, what I gave him from the mystery from God in the Bible, the Jubilee, was going to tell him exactly how much time he would have left on his throne, on his reign. He was the longest lasting leader in modern history. But this was going to, this was going to say by the Jubilee, the year it would end, the month, the week, the day, the hour that it would end, and to the hour. And so it came true. And the thing is that you know, America and Russia, America, you know, America was trying to get rid of him for years. You know, they couldn't. No power on earth got rid of him, but the Jubilee got rid of him. You know, Jubilee. Wow. And the thing is that because Jubilee is like release. It's a release. So
of the captives, right?
Yeah, in that sense, there was a release. So that's like I share that, and there's much more in the book about amazing things that happen. But the thing is that this is. Now, the mystery of the Jubilee is going to have to do with everything in our lives, what we just went through, COVID, with everything. It's all linked to the same mystery, because Jubilee is not just, you know, hey, it's a great thing, we're going to get everything back. If you lost your land, you got it back in the Jubilee. But there's another side. If you're the one who took the land, in the Jubilee, it's taken from you. So there's restitution, there's judgment. That's the other side, and that other side is going to have everything to do with what we all just went through the 3 years of our life. With COVID, the lockdowns, the shakings, and that's the next mystery that that's opened up in the Josiah Manifesto.
Excellent. So the Jubilee stands there as a witness to those who are doing what is right. They're going to have restitution.
That's right.
Those that are doing wrong, they're going to have judgment.
That's right.
We stand in that place. Now, how does that parallel with America? Because you can see For me, that's the way it goes too. I can see Israel and I see America. And I look at Israel and I go, they stand, it says you stand at a crossroads, choose the ancient way that leads to blessing. It's like, okay, America has to choose the old way, the ancient way, the foundations that leads to blessing. But how do they parallel? What do you see with America and Israel's history?
Well, first of all, America was patterned after Israel. Well, the Puritans founded America to be after the pattern of Israel. And so that if we followed God, we'd be the most blessed nation. Well, we have been. But people forget the other side. If you don't follow God, then judgments will come, the same judgment that came on Israel. And that's a lot of when you look at the harbinger, it's the pattern. When you look at the paradigm, when you look at the Shemitah, all that. Well, the thing is this, if you take what doesn't belong to you, in the Jubilee it's taken from you. America took what didn't belong to it. In 1970, we began taking the lives of our children. That's when abortion began, not 73. It began in 1970, abortion on demand in America. And the thing is that, so what happens if you go to the Jubilee 50 years later? What year? Takes you to 2020. 2020, anything happened in that year? 2020 is the year that this plague comes on this land, particularly on America. We know it's the world, but by the way, that this whole generation of, that it came on was the generation that had killed more children than any other generation in human history. And America was leading, was one of the leaders, one of the major leaders, and led other countries into it, and many others. And so soon it starts focusing on America. The focal point was America, of this pandemic. And the thing is if you go that's 2020, the exact day that abortion, us going down the route actually began, it was in New York. And it was January 20th, 1970, when the bill that was going to legalize abortion on demand, first bill, comes up in the legislature. And the thing is, what happens if you go 50 years later? It takes you to January 20th, 2020. Anything happen? Yes. January 20th, 2020 is the day of patient zero. It's the day
in New York.
No, in the West Coast.
Oh,
actually.
yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
that's right.
That's the other entrance, and that's the day that it enters the land. 50 years to the day we took the lives of children. Now this death comes on the exact day. And the other thing is, when you look at it, if you remember, that's when it came. But then it took a little time before it came on the whole nation, and that was in March. And that's what everybody remembers it, because that's when our lives were changed. That's when the lockdowns came, the president went on. It was one day, the media called it the day that changed everything. And that day, so Trump goes on television, and we are quarantined that day. It's called a pandemic that day. Everything starts closing down that day. The stock market crashes that day. Well, that's the day when it hit. So what happens if you go back 50 years? That was March 11th, 2020. Go back 50 years, takes you to March 11th, 1970. Anything happen? March 11th, 1970 is the exact day we began killing our children. It was 50 years to the day.
Wow.
And there's more to that, mystery, because when Jeremiah, he prophesied over the Valley of Hinnom, where they're killing their children. And he said, judgment's going to come as you have done to the children. But one of the judgments he said is called in the Bible, in Jeremiah, Dever Gadol. Dever Gadol means a great plague. So one of the things that comes, a great plague or pandemic or contagion. Well, what happens? So it happens. And the thing is that he says it will return to the place, the Valley of Hinnom where you kill the children, is going to be called the Valley of Slaughter, because it's going to come back to where you did it. Well, does America have a Valley of Hinnom? It does, and it's New York. New York, we've killed more children in New York than any other place. It's the abortion capital of America.
And the place where they light up the
Where was it?
It's also the place where they light up all of the information about LGBTQ. It's the place they push all that.
Everything comes.
Times Square. It's everywhere.
Everything comes from New York.
Yeah.
I mean, often, the Bible talks about the gate, and that things come through the gate. Well, New York has been the gate of so much stuff. It's New York, abortion and gender, all this stuff, much more. The harbingers are mostly New York. The harbingers that appear. So the thing is that's where we killed more children. So the mystery would say that it's going to come back to that place. Well, what happens is soon after this plague begins, it focuses on America. 1 out of every 3 cases in the world, America. In America, all of a sudden it focuses on one little more specific place, New York. 1 out of every 2 cases in America were happening in New York. So New York, now became the global capital of the plague. I mean, and so the abortion capital of America becomes the plague capital. I mean,
To the day in the judgment.
And that, yeah, the day that it reached its peak, where it actually had more cases of COVID in New York than any other nation, including China. Imagine that, little New York. Well, the thing is, it was April 10th. Well, go back 50 years, takes you to April 10th, 1970. April 10th, 1970 is the day that New York legalized abortion. So 50 years later to the day, it comes back.